Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing: a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. But I'm still teaching Zettelkasten as a side venture here. I cannot believe how many comments I'm getting and great questions from you viewers. I'm just thrilled to know that this is actually helping you get your system off the ground, because that is really what's motivating me to stay on the topic of Zettelkasten. Well, tonight's question is courtesy of Kat Marie. I've titled it How to Avoid Over-Indexing. But basically what Kat wants to know is, are there two sides of the problem of indexing? Could you have too many keywords from a given tagline, which these days I'm calling a memory prompt? Or also whether to index every card that goes into the Zettelkasten. She wants to know if you end up over-indexing so that it's actually harder to find things, or what about the problem of indexing enough so that you can find things. So this isn't so much of a how-to as how do you manage the trade-offs between indexing a lot and not indexing very much. How do you get the right balance there? So we're going to transfer over to the down-facing camera so we can take a look at some of the things that I've run into that I can share with you that might be of helpful to you as you get your Zettelkasten going. Okay, here I am with the index to my Zettelkasten. It's practically a whole drawer here, but this much is my index, and beyond here, this is my people box. Okay, so that's just a little bit of how my system is constructed. So I'm going to start here with the index, because that's what the question is all about. That's what Kat Marie is asking about is, okay, how much indexing is too much? How much is too little? Does every card have to be indexed? And how do you choose how many keywords in the card to index? Well, if we're talking about what makes an index sometimes a pain in the neck to work with, I will show you the letter T as my example for right now, my ongoing most problematic letter of the alphabet. You see it's quite thick. And not only is it quite thick, but I have a whole bunch of cards that are just general letter T cards. So that if I am looking for a word like training, I've got to literally scan all of these cards, unless it turns out to be a card that has already gained its own card. And if a card has already grown up enough to have a whole card devoted to it, then it's very easy to find. In my plan, if a word shows up 3 times, I promote it, which I indicate with this symbol, that it's gotten to go on a card of its own. Now, what makes T's so hard to work with is their size. Now, as you might have guessed, this has happened before. And in fact, here's my letter S. And what I want you to notice with my letter S is I don't have that problem, because my letter S is already broken up into 5 subgroups, so that each time I pull one out, this is S, A, B, C, D, and it's quite manageable. So if you're talking about a convenient or an inconvenient index, break up your letters as soon as they start giving you grief. So that will reduce some of the headaches. Well, now I want to take a specific card to go through with you to talk about how much indexing is needed and how much is too much. So I pulled a card that is a rather interesting one, and it's from a case where I have a word subconscious has been used enough that it's on a card of its own. And so each one of the things that I try to include in my index are what I've called either the taglines, or I have a new name for them. I used to call them the tagline. I'm now calling them the memory prompt phrase. On the old card, I would say that the tagline recalls the whole card. That's what I hope the memory prompt phrase reminds me that I want that phrase to capture the entire thought of the card, not just the information, not just my feelings. I want to capture the interplay of the information and my feelings in the memory prompt phrase. That phrase, whether you call it a tagline or a memory prompt phrase, is what goes into my index. So every index entry includes that whole memory prompt phrase. Is that too much in its own right? And I think for me, the answer is no. When I take an item off of a bib note and say, okay, I want a main note for it, that is because that piece of information lit up my brain. If what I had on my bib card was just a factoid, I'm going to leave it on the bib card. And I'm going to wait for that information that just causes my brain to fire and gives me an idea that, oh my, if I get that, oh, how interesting. If I get that reaction, then it's worthy of a main card. And the crazy thing about that is that when I capture that one piece of information that lit up my brain, all the other pieces come with it. All the other factoids just come rushing back just by reviewing this card, and sometimes just by reviewing the memory prompt phrase. So these cards that become main cards are the linchpins. So that's your first place where you're going to avoid over-indexing, is by avoiding creating too many main cards. If you're only creating a main card to memorize a fact, put it on a file card, fine, but make it a flash card and drill it until you know it and then throw it away, or put it in a review box or something. Your Zettelkasten is for your thoughts and ideas and stimulating information. Okay, so we've got the memory prompt phrase is the content of what goes on to one of these cards. So now, if we're talking about when I go through this card to figure out where do I want to place a new card, when I read any one of these lines, it's going to bring back to mind the entire card, and if I've done it correctly. And that's very powerful, because now just glancing through here, I can bring a whole lot of cards back to life. And that saves me running back to my Zettelkasten drawer when I'm trying to narrow down where a new card might want to go, or when I'm trying to figure out what cards I might want to pull for an article I'm writing, a podcast, an issue of my newsletter, a new book, whatever. So now the question after this becomes, well, which ones of these key words do you want to actually capture? Now, here are two very, very similar lines, card 1M2B and 1M2A. One says training the subconscious mind to work, and the other one is prepping the subconscious mind for work. Now, I actually know what cards these are just by reading these. Prepping the subconscious mind for work has to do with Sertalanges, when he says the night before he has a light supper and he lays out his work for the coming day, and that helps him to prepare his subconscious mind to think about the work overnight so that when he wakes up in the morning, he often has a lot of ideas ready to go. So that word is important to be in the tagline, but it probably isn't of any great value to put prep into the index, mainly because prep, training, getting ready, I'm not likely to remember exactly what word I used to capture the idea of setting things up so that your subconscious mind will work for you. But what's definitely going to be there is subconscious, mind, and work. So those would be the three that I would pick. Now, when I pull out the card on the mind, the interesting thing is I have 1M2B training the subconscious mind to work, but I don't have 1M2A prepping the subconscious mind to work. So apparently during one time when I was indexing, I decided that it was important enough to include mind, and the other time I decided that subconscious would probably do the work, and I probably did not need mind. Now, what about the word work? Now, work in my card list is a mighty busy topic. And so what we've got there is more stuff going on, and it's not going to be narrowing it down nearly as much as the other card. And in point of fact, I don't even see either of those other two cards. Neither prepping for work nor training the subconscious mind for work were considered important enough to include in the index. And that's another place where you can reduce the amount of over-indexing by picking the keywords, the ones that are going to be the most important for capturing the topic that you have in mind. And in this case, subconscious was tightly tied to the subject matter. And in one instance, it was the only word that actually went into my index. Now, when I use multiple words, like if I use training, subconscious, mind, work, if I chose to do that, it would probably not be so much because I thought I'd find it under training when I was looking for this particular card, but because when I'm looking at training for some other purpose, I'll stumble on this card and it will provide an interesting tangential thought to my new training. Perhaps I'm involved in training for some kind of physical activity. And then I would bump into training the subconscious for work. And that could cause me to think about, oh, I wonder to what degree my physical activity might be enhanced by seeing if I could also enlist my subconscious mind to be involved in it. So you see, it can spark ideas. And not every use of your index is a search for exactly the right match. A lot of times it's an energizer, another angle at thinking about things, in which case you are training the subconscious mind for creativity, for associations, for imagination, because every time you stretch to say, how could these two distinct uses of training be related to one another, you're building connections in your mind and you're firing these connector searches, which give your brain little bursts of dopamine. And that can fuel an evening's work. So just these little side sparks can keep interest going, creativity going, and energy going in your system. So bottom line, I think if you want to avoid over-indexing, the place to do it is right here at the choice of a main card. Don't over-create main cards. Don't be afraid to leave some things on the bib card. You have your source right here, so you can quickly find the bib card that this idea came from. And if you need to, you can pull up all the boring factoids from your bib card. And if you leave the boring factoids on the bib card, then indexing will not be boring. And also, when you were repeating this memory prompt phrase over and over as you make your index entries, you are cementing this entire thought process into your brain, and you're communicating to your subconscious mind that this is important because you've repeated it, repeated it, repeated it. Think about this, subconscious, this is important. And that's how your subconscious mind ends up having ideas like this available to contribute to your future creativity. So, Kat Marie, did I answer your question? If I didn't, please try again in the comments and I'll take another stab at it. In the meantime, what I'd like to also make a real brief mention of, I am designing a course, the goal of which is to take participants through the task of setting up their own Zettelkasten. The idea is you start from wherever you are, a stalled Zettelkasten, a Zettelkasten that's not even off the ground, wherever you are in that process, you go through the course, which is like an adventure game, and you come out the other end with a Zettelkasten up, running, and working for you. That's the dream of the course. If you'd like to be in on the loop as I plan it and get progress notifications, you can sign up on a list on my website, KathleenSpracklin.com, ZK-Dreams, and it'll also be in the comments, and I'll just keep you updated as the plans progress. So thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.